Hi, I'm Bill Sullivan, your reader. I'm reading from the Annals of the American Pulpit, volume number 3, published in 1860, Accounts of Various Ministers. Volume 3 deals with Presbyterian ministers. And as I mentioned, it's the Annals of the American Pulpit, so we're talking about American Presbyterian ministers. And this article that I want to read now is on John Blair Smith, Doctor of Divinity, who was active as a minister and educator from 1778 through 1799. The article reads as follows. John Blair Smith was the fourth son of the Reverend Robert Smith, Doctor of Divinity, and was born at Pequea, P-E-Q-U-E-A, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, June the 12th, 1756. He received his name from a maternal uncle, his mother being a sister of the Reverend Messrs. Samuel and John Blair. Remember, we're reading about John Blair Smith. In very early life, he evinced a great thirst for knowledge and an uncommon facility at acquiring it. At the age of 14, he became, under the most watchful and faithful parental training, hopefully a subject of renewing grace, and at 16 was admitted to the junior class in the College of New Jersey. During his whole college course, though he was naturally of a cheerful and social turn, his conduct as a Christian was always worthy of his profession, and his improvement in the various branches of study worthy of his acknowledged talents, and answerable to the high hopes which his earlier developments had awakened. He was graduated under Dr. Witherspoon in 1773 and was one of a class of 29, 14 of whom became ministers of the gospel, and 3 governors of states. An elder brother, Samuel Stanhope Smith, having become the head of the rising institution in Prince Edward County, Virginia, under the care of the Presbytery of Hanover, and also in 1775 been installed pastor of the churches of Cumberland and Briery in Prince Edward. The subject of this notice went, at his suggestion in the early part of 1776, to join his brother as an assistant teacher, and at the same time to prosecute the theological studies under his direction. Having previously joined the Newcastle Presbytery, he transferred his relation from that to the Presbytery of Hanover on the 18th of June, 1777, and having gone through several trials, was licensed to preach by the latter body at Tinkling Spring on the 29th of April, 1778. He was ordained by the same presbytery at Prince Edward Courthouse on the 26th of October, 1776. At the same meeting of presbytery, on October the 28th, his brother, having received an invitation to the chair of moral philosophy in the College of New Jersey, asked leave to resign the presidency of Hampton-Sydney College and also his pastoral charge, both which requests were granted. John Blair Smith was immediately appointed to succeed him as president of the college, and in the spring of the next year, 1780, he became his successor also in the pastoral office. About this time, Mr. Smith was united in marriage with Elizabeth, daughter of Colonel John Nash of Templeton, Prince Edward County, a lady distinguished alike for her accomplishments and her piety. They had 6 children, 5 sons and 1 daughter. One of the sons, Robert, entered the ministry and for some time served the church in Snow Hill, Maryland, where he died in 1824. Though Mr. Smith, from the time he appeared in the pulpit, attracted much attention as a preacher, yet he was by no means at first so popular as his brother who had preceded him. Before he left the state, however, he is said to have been at once more attractive and powerful than any other clergyman in Virginia from the time of Samuel Davies. But the earlier years of his ministry were much less distinguished for zeal and activity than those that followed. The times were most adverse to the progress of religion and the success of ministerial labor. The state, and that very part of it, had been invaded by the British, and the minds of the people were occupied chiefly about their own safety and their country's independence. Mr. Smith was an earnest patriot, and withal was a man of great activity and courage. The college suffered much in consequence of the war. Its resources were exhausted, and the youth who should have been pursuing their classical studies were hurried off to the army. After the peace, it was some time before religion and literature began to revive. The Methodists about this time began to pass through Virginia, and by their great zeal attracted no inconsiderable attention. In some places, the members of the Presbyterian Church were induced in considerable numbers to join their society. About the year 1786 or 1787, they came within the bounds of Mr. Smith's congregations, and were probably the means, so says Dr. Alexander, of giving a fresh impulse to both his religious feelings and his public ministrations. Instead of condemning what in them he disapproved, he endeavored to imitate what he considered praiseworthy, and from this time he exhibited a degree of ardor which had never been witnessed in him before. He preached with a power and frequency which, by the divine blessing, soon began to produce visible effects. An extensive revival of religion ensued, which spread through the college and the whole adjacent country. Mr. Smith entered into the work with such glowing zeal, and his preaching was so eloquent and powerful that he was continually urged to extend his labors and to places more and more remote from his residence. By this means he was so often called away from the college that some of his friends thought that he was less attentive to his duties there than could be desired. And this was felt the more as the institution, being without funds, depended for its support on the fees of the students. He himself also was of the opinion that his first duty was to preach the gospel, and as there seemed to be on every side a great demand for preaching, he determined to resign his office as president of the college and give himself wholly to the appropriate work of a minister. This resolution he carried into effect in the year 1789, and at the same time he bought a small farm in the neighborhood of the college and went to live upon it. We'll stop here for the moment and continue on the next clip.